At 9:30 a.m. on September 21st, 2001, FBI Special Agent Stephen McCoy walked into a Defense Intelligence Agency office at Bolling Air Force Base in Washington, D.C., 10 days after the September 11th attacks. The nation was still counting bodies at Ground Zero, the Pentagon crater was still smoking, and McCoy was about to arrest a Pentagon analyst who'd been spying for Cuba for 16 years. Belen Montes, 44 years old, 16-year DIA veteran, senior analyst for Cuban affairs, top secret/sensitive compartmented information clearance, the Pentagon's most respected expert on Cuba, winner of the CIA's Certificate of Distinction, about to accept a fellowship at the National Intelligence Council. She sat at her cubicle doing paperwork. She had no idea this was the end. 4 of her close family members worked for the FBI. Her younger sister, Lucy Montes, was an FBI language specialist in Miami. Her younger brother, Tito Montes, was an FBI agent. Her sister-in-law worked for the FBI. Lucy's job? Hunting Cuban spies operating in the United States. Anna's job? Being one. The Defense Intelligence Agency had been bleeding secrets to Cuba for over a decade. Operations blown. Assets exposed. 4 undercover U.S. intelligence officers operating in Cuba had their identities handed directly to Cuban intelligence. At least 1 Green Beret dead because of leaked information. Millions of dollars in intelligence operations compromised. And the woman responsible had been the Pentagon's go-to expert on Cuba the entire time. She'd written intelligence assessments the Secretary of Defense read. She'd briefed generals preparing for potential conflict with Cuba. She'd had access to every classified operation targeting the island nation 90 miles from Florida. Standard procedure said trust your senior analysts. The DIA trusted Ana Montes completely. They shouldn't have. In 1984, the Defense Intelligence Agency had no idea it had a problem. The CIA had assets in Cuba providing intelligence on Castro's military capabilities. The DIA monitored Cuban activities in Latin America. The NSA intercepted communications. U.S. intelligence agencies had Cuba boxed in, or they thought they did. Between 1987 and 2001, something went catastrophically wrong. U.S. operations in Cuba started failing. Assets got arrested, intelligence officers got compromised, technology secrets leaked to Havana. The pattern was brutal and consistent. March 31, 1987, El Paraíso Military Garrison, El Salvador. U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Gregory A. Fronius, 27 years old, Special Forces, advising Salvadoran troops. FMLN guerrillas attacked the base at dawn with mortars and small arms fire. They knew exactly where the U.S. advisors were positioned. Sergeant Fronius rallied Salvadoran troops under fire, led a counterattack, killed by guerrilla mortar fire during the battle. Posthumously awarded the Silver Star. DIA counterintelligence investigator Scott Carmichael would later determine that Ana Montes had visited that exact compound weeks before the attack. She'd been the Pentagon's principal analyst for El Salvador. She'd been briefed on U.S. Special Forces positions. She'd told Cuban intelligence. Cuban intelligence told their FLN guerrilla allies in El Salvador. Sergeant Fronius paid with his life, but in 1987, nobody suspected Ana Montes. She was too good at her job, too respected, too smart. And the disasters kept coming. Over the next 14 years, 4 U.S. undercover intelligence officers working in Cuba had their identities exposed to Cuban counterintelligence. Their operations blown, their assets rolled up. Years of work destroyed overnight. The CIA couldn't recruit sources in Cuba anymore. Anyone who agreed to work with American intelligence got arrested within months, sometimes weeks. Someone was talking. The intelligence community launched mole hunts, investigated everyone with access, polygraphed personnel, analyzed communication patterns, reviewed travel records. They found nothing. Because they were looking for the wrong profile. They were looking for someone disgruntled, someone with financial problems, someone with red flags. Ana Montes had none of those markers. She was a model employee, brilliant analyst, published expert, won awards, got promoted, received commendations. Colleagues called her the smartest person they'd worked with. Her only quirk, she never dated men with security clearances. She said she wanted to keep work and personal life separate. Smart operational security from a spy who understood the risks. If you want to see how the FBI finally caught the Pentagon's most damaging Cuban spy after 16 years of betrayal, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to show this story to more people who need to hear it. And trust me, what happens next is worth staying for. Ana Belen Montes was born February 28, 1957, at the U.S. Army Hospital in Nuremberg, West Germany. Her father, Alberto Montes, was a U.S. Army doctor. Army brat. Military family. Her grandparents had immigrated to Puerto Rico from Spain's Asturian region. The family moved frequently because of her father's postings. The Montes household was not happy. Alberto Montes had what family members later described as a harsh temper. Strict disciplinarian. The children grew up walking on eggshells. Ana was the oldest. Lucy and Tito came after. The pressure to achieve was constant. Ana excelled academically. Perfect way to gain approval in a household where nothing was ever quite good enough. The family eventually settled in Topeka, Kansas, when Alberto retired from the Army. Ana attended Topeka High School. Straight-A student. Graduated 1975. Applied to the University of Virginia. Got in. Majored in foreign affairs. Graduated 1979. Still no hint of what was coming. She seemed like every other ambitious college graduate, aiming for a career in government or international relations. She got a job as a clerk at the Department of Justice. Paralegal work, filing briefs, legal research, nothing sensitive, no security clearance yet. And she enrolled part-time at Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies in Washington, D.C. Master's program in International Relations. Concentration on Latin America. That's when everything changed. She met a fellow student at Johns Hopkins, a woman named Marta Rita Velasquez, law student, smart, politically engaged, passionate about social justice in Latin America. They became friends. What Ana didn't know, Marta Velasquez was a Cuban intelligence officer, talent spotter, recruiter, operating under perfect cover as a graduate student. Velasquez had been watching Ana for months, profiling her, assessing her vulnerabilities. Ana was brilliant, ambitious, had strong views on U.S. foreign policy toward Latin America, disagreed vocally with Reagan administration policies in Central America, U.S. support for right-wing governments in El Salvador, Contra rebels in Nicaragua, the embargo against Cuba. Ana found it all morally wrong, cruel, imperialist, perfect motivation for recruitment. Velasquez approached her carefully, tested her views, confirmed her ideology, then made the pitch. Cuba needed help. The U.S. government was strangling a small island nation, threatening military action, funding destabilization efforts. Someone with access to U.S. intelligence could help prevent war, could save lives, could work for peace. Would Ana consider helping Cuba understand U.S. intentions? Ana Montes said yes. She later told interrogators she believed the U.S. government's Cuba policy was cruel and unfair, that she'd decided to follow her conscience instead of the law. She'd serve her conscience for 16 years, at the cost of American lives. The recruitment happened sometime in 1984. The exact date remains classified. Velasquez introduced Ana to a Cuban intelligence officer. The officer explained what Cuba needed, how communication would work, what Ana should do to prepare. Step 1. Get a job with access. September 1985. Ana Montes joined the Defense Intelligence Agency as an intelligence research specialist, entry-level analyst. Cuba wasn't even her initial focus. She started analyzing Central America. But she was inside. That's what mattered. She spent her first months proving herself, writing sharp analysis, impressing supervisors, getting promoted. Within 2 years, she'd become the DIA's principal analyst for El Salvador and Nicaragua. Perfect access to exactly the intelligence Cuba wanted about U.S. operations in Central America. March 1987. Ana Montes visited the U.S. Special Forces compound in El Paraíso, El Salvador, part of a routine Pentagon assessment trip. She was briefed on U.S. advisor positions, Salvadoran troop strengths, operational security measures. Weeks later, FMLN guerrillas attacked the base with precision targeting. Sergeant Fronius died. The connection wouldn't be discovered for 14 more years. By 1992, Ana had become the DIA's senior analyst for Cuba, the Cuba expert, the go-to person for anything related to Castro's military, intelligence capabilities, or strategic intentions. She had top-secret clearance with sensitive compartmented information access. TSSCI, the highest level, gave her access to the crown jewels of U.S. intelligence on Cuba, CIA operations, NSA signals intelligence, human source reporting, everything. And she was passing it all to Havana. 3 nights per week, Ana pulled out her shortwave radio, a small Sony receiver she tuned to specific frequencies. High-frequency broadcasts from Cuba, numbers stations. If you've never heard a numbers station, they sound like science fiction. A voice reading groups of numbers, 5-digit groups, sometimes hundreds of them, transmitted from hidden locations, impossible to trace. Encrypted messages hidden in plain sight. Station HM1. That was Ana's station, broadcasting from Cuba on various frequencies, transmitted at specific times, always the same format. A female voice, monotone, Spanish accent. Atención, atención. 15327, 28943. Groups of 5 numbers, sometimes for 20 minutes straight. Then, silence. Ana wrote the numbers down, on special paper. Water-soluble paper provided by Cuban intelligence. If discovered, she could dissolve it in seconds in her kitchen sink. She had a cheat sheet, also on water-soluble paper. A cipher key, letters and numbers corresponding to a straddling checkerboard encryption system. Old-school pencil and paper cryptography, unbreakable if you don't have the key. Ana decrypted the numbers by hand, turned them into letters, letters into words, words into instructions from her handlers. Report on U.S. assessment of Cuban military readiness. Identify U.S. intelligence officers assigned to Havana Station. Describe technical capabilities of U.S. signals intelligence targeting Cuba. She took the instructions to work the next day, used her access to pull classified files, read intelligence reports, memorized names and operations and technical details. Ana Montes had an extraordinary memory. Photographic, some colleagues said. She could read a classified document and recall it perfectly hours later. Didn't need to photocopy anything, didn't need to smuggle files out of the office, she just remembered. At night, she encrypted her responses, used the same cheat sheet, turned letters into numbers, 5-digit groups, wrote them on more water-soluble paper. Then she signaled she had intelligence to pass. 2 methods. Method 1, pager. She carried a simple numeric pager. Her Cuban handlers would page her with number codes. Specific combinations meant specific things. 123 meant, check for new message on shortwave tonight at 8 p.m. 456 meant, emergency meeting required. 789 meant, abort current operation. Method 2, chalk mark. She'd make a small chalk mark on a specific mailbox, as in Arlington, Virginia. White chalk, barely visible, meant, I have material ready for dead drop. The FBI would later photograph that exact chalk mark during surveillance. For communicating her encrypted messages back to Cuba, Ana used payphones, specific phone booths at specific times. She'd call a pager number, leave the encrypted 5-digit groups as a long voicemail of numbers. Her handlers in Havana would receive the page, decrypt the numbers, get the intelligence. The system was brilliant in its simplicity. No physical meetings after the initial recruitment. No suspicious contacts, no paper trails, no emails or computer records. Just a woman calling a pager from a payphone, reading numbers. Could be anyone calling anyone about anything. And she accepted no payment. That was Ana's rule. She was an ideological spy, pure believer. Money would have offended her sense of mission. She was saving Cuba from American aggression, preventing war, following her conscience. The Cubans reimbursed her for operational expenses only. Shortwave radio, pagers, batteries, pocket change. Her DIA salary was enough, about $80,000 per year by the late 1990s. Comfortable. She lived in a modest apartment in Cleveland Park, Washington, D.C. Nothing flashy, no luxury cars, no suspicious purchases. Unlike Aldrich Ames with his Jaguar, Ana flew completely under the radar financially. December 1996. Ana passed the identity of a third undercover U.S. intelligence officer operating in Cuba. CIA officer. Deep cover. Took years to position him there, providing critical intelligence on Cuban military plans. Cuban counterintelligence arrested him within weeks. That same year, she exposed a fourth U.S. intelligence officer. Same result. Arrested. Expelled. By 2000, the CIA had effectively zero human intelligence capability inside Cuba. Every operation was compromised. Every asset rolled up. Millions of dollars and years of work down the drain. The intelligence community knew they had a leak. They just couldn't find it. Spring 2000, DIA counterintelligence investigator Scott Carmichael got a call from the FBI. The Bureau was investigating a suspected Cuban mole inside the U.S. intelligence community. They had intercepts, communications intelligence suggesting someone high-level in the Pentagon was passing information to Havana. Could the DIA help narrow down suspects? Carmichael was passionate about counterintelligence. This was his dream case, catching a mole inside his own agency. He started building a matrix. Who had access to all the compromised operations? Who knew about the CIA officers in Cuba? Who had been briefed on Special Forces positions in El Salvador? The list was long at first. Dozens of analysts and officers with the necessary clearances. Carmichael eliminated people one by one. Wrong timeline. Retired before key compromises. No access to specific operations. Transferred to different assignments. One name kept appearing in every column. Ana Montes. She'd been at DIA since 1985. She'd visited El Salvador before the Fronius attack. She'd had access to CIA operations in Cuba. She'd read NSA intercepts. She'd briefed senior Pentagon officials on Cuban military capabilities. She had access to everything that had been compromised. But Carmichael needed more than access. He needed evidence. A case built on suspicion alone wouldn't hold up. September 2000. Scott Carmichael interviewed Ana Montes as part of a routine security review, counterintelligence protocol. He watched her carefully, asked innocuous questions about her work, her background, her travel. Ana was composed, professional, answered everything calmly. No obvious deception. But Carmichael noticed something small. When he asked about Cuba policy, her answers had an edge, passion. She thought US policy was wrong, too harsh, counterproductive. That passion struck him as unusual for an intelligence analyst. Analysts were supposed to assess, not advocate. He reported his concerns to the FBI. December 2000. The FBI opened a formal investigation. Operation Blue Wren, code name for Ana Montes. The bird reference was intentional. Blue for Cuba, Wren for small but significant. Led FBI agent Stephen McCoy, Cuba counterintelligence specialist. He'd worked Cuban spy cases for years, knew their tradecraft, knew their communication methods. McCoy began surveillance, careful, discreet. They couldn't spook her. The FBI needed to catch her in the act. May 2001. FBI surveillance teams began following Ana Montes. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, multiple vehicles, multiple agents, rotating teams so she wouldn't recognize the same cars. They watched her drive to work. Pentagon parking, same routine every morning. They watched her lunch breaks, walked to nearby restaurants, nothing suspicious. They watched her evenings, grocery shopping, bookstores, alone. And they watched her make calls from payphones. May 20th, 2001. Sunday evening. Ana left her Cleveland Park apartment, drove to a payphone near DuPont Circle, parked, walked to the phone booth, made a call. Lasted 12 minutes. She appeared to be reading from something. Speaking numbers. FBI surveillance photographed everything. The FBI checked the number she called. Paging service. The page contained a long string of numbers. No text, just numbers. McCoy knew exactly what he was looking at. Encrypted communication. The pager number was likely monitored by Cuban intelligence, but they needed more. May 25th, 2001, Friday night. Ana made another payphone call. Different location, same pattern. Reading numbers into a paging service. The FBI was building a timeline. Frequency. Pattern. Proof of ongoing espionage. June 2001. The FBI got a breakthrough. A retired Cuban intelligence officer defected. Part of his debriefing included information about Ana Montes. He couldn't confirm her name, but he described a high-level Pentagon analyst codenamed Agent S, or Small Bird, who'd been providing intelligence to Cuba since the mid-1980s. The description matched Ana Montes perfectly. July 2001, the FBI applied for a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrant. FISA court approved. They could now conduct physical searches of Ana's apartment and plant surveillance devices. Late July 2001, FBI agents entered Ana's Cleveland Park apartment while she was at work. They searched methodically, photographed everything, looked for evidence without leaving traces of their presence. In her bedroom closet, a Sony shortwave radio. In a notebook hidden in her bedroom, handwritten notes, frequencies, times, sequences of numbers. In the lining of another notebook, a cipher key, the cheat sheet, letters and numbers, water-soluble paper. They photographed everything, left it exactly as they found it. Ana never knew they'd been there. August 2001, FBI cryptanalysts examined the cipher key. Classic straddling checkerboard. Cuban intelligence had used similar systems with other agents. Combined with the shortwave frequencies and the pay phone calls, the case was coming together. But they wanted to catch her passing classified information, not just communicating with handlers. September 11th, 2001. The World Trade Center towers collapsed. The Pentagon burned. Nearly 3,000 people dead. The FBI had a problem. Ana Montes worked in the Pentagon's Cuba section. In the aftermath of 9/11, the Defense Department would be mobilizing for war. Ana would have access to war plans, troop movements, intelligence on potential terrorist connections to Cuba. If she was still passing information to Havana, she could compromise wartime operations. They couldn't wait any longer. September 19th, 2001. FBI Director Robert Mueller approved the arrest. The operation would happen September the 21st, Friday morning. Stephen McCoy and his partner prepared the arrest plan. They'd take her at her desk, at the DIA office at Belen Air Force Base. Quiet, no drama, no media circus. They'd move before she arrived at work to prevent her from accessing classified material that day. September 21st, 2001, 9:30 a.m. Ana Montes sat at her cubicle. She'd arrived at work normally that morning, logged into her computer, started her daily routine reviewing intelligence cables. Stephen McCoy approached with two other FBI agents. Ana Montes? She looked up. FBI, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit espionage. Ana showed no emotion, didn't act surprised, didn't resist, didn't say anything. She stood up. McCoy handcuffed her, read her rights. Her DIA colleagues stared in shock. Ana Montes, the Ana Montes, the best Cuba analyst in the Pentagon. Within minutes, FBI agents swarmed her cubicle, seized her computer, collected files, photographed her desk. At 10:15 a.m., they escorted her out of the building. 16 years of espionage, over in 45 minutes. Simultaneously, FBI agents executed search warrants at Ana's apartment in Cleveland Park. They found the Sony shortwave radio, hidden in her bedroom, the notebooks with frequencies and times, encrypted number sequences on water-soluble paper, the cipher key, handwritten cheat sheet for encrypting and decrypting messages, computer disks, encryption software provided by Cuban intelligence, a Toshiba laptop, separate from her work computer, used for personal encryption, pages, with stored number codes from her handlers, everything the FBI needed to prove she'd been running a sophisticated espionage operation for years. But the most damaging evidence came from her interrogation. That afternoon at FBI headquarters, Ana Montes sat across from Stephen McCoy. She'd been advised of her rights, offered an attorney. She waived her right to counsel, and she started talking. Not because she was scared, not because she wanted a deal, but because she was proud of what she'd done. McCoy asked why she did it. I obeyed my conscience rather than the law, Ana said. I believe our government's policy towards Cuba is cruel and unfair, profoundly unneighborly, and I felt morally obligated to help the island defend itself from our efforts to impose our values and our political system on it. She admitted everything. 16 years of espionage, receiving encrypted messages via shortwave radio, encrypting responses and passing them via pagers and payphones, using her top-secret clearance to access classified information Cuba wanted. She admitted revealing the identities of 4 U.S. undercover intelligence officers operating in Cuba. She knew those officers' operations were destroyed. She knew they could have been arrested or killed. She didn't care. She believed she was preventing war. McCoy asked about Sergeant Fronius, the Green Beret killed in El Salvador after she visited his compound. Ana grew quiet. She acknowledged visiting the compound, acknowledged being briefed on U.S. positions, acknowledged reporting that information to Cuba, but she claimed she didn't intend for anyone to die. She'd been trying to help Cuba understand U.S. activities. She didn't know Cuba would share that intelligence with MLN guerrillas. McCoy didn't believe her. The damage assessment began immediately. The DIA and CIA formed a joint task force, catalogued every operation Ana had access to, every file she'd read, every briefing she'd attended. The numbers were catastrophic. Human intelligence compromised. At least 4 U.S. intelligence officers' identities exposed, their operations blown, sources arrested, years of work destroyed, estimated financial loss, over $100 million in compromised operations, burned assets, and ruined technology programs. Military intelligence compromised. Ana had provided Cuba with detailed assessments of U.S. military capabilities, war plans for potential conflict with Cuba, special operations protocols, communication systems. Cuba knew how the U.S. would fight if war came. They knew U.S. strengths and weaknesses. They'd had 60 years to prepare countermeasures. Strategic intelligence compromised. Ana had revealed U.S. intelligence collection methods, which Cuban officials the U.S. was targeting, what technical systems were being used, how the U.S. assessed Cuban intentions. Cuba adapted their operations accordingly. They knew what to hide and how to hide it. Allied intelligence compromised. The U.S. shared intelligence with allies. Britain, Canada, other NATO partners. Ana had access to some of that shared intelligence. Cuba now potentially had access through her betrayals. The British were furious, so were the Canadians. Trust between Allied intelligence services was damaged. Counterintelligence changes mandatory. The Ana Montes case exposed catastrophic security failures. How did she operate undetected for 16 years? Why weren't there better financial monitoring systems? Why did it take so long to investigate? The DIA implemented immediate changes, enhanced polygraph procedures, stricter financial disclosure requirements, mandatory lifestyle audits for anyone with TSS-SCI clearances, random counterintelligence interviews, and one personal impact that haunted investigators. Ana Montes had a sister, Lucy Montes, FBI language specialist, Miami office. For years, Lucy had worked on an FBI task force hunting Cuban spies in the United States, the WASP network, Cuban intelligence officers operating undercover in Florida. Lucy was good at her job, helped identify Cuban agents, provided translations, assisted investigations, and the whole time her older sister was the Cuban spy she should have been hunting. Lucy found out about Ana's arrest the same day everyone else did. FBI supervisors called her into an office, told her what had happened. Her sister, a Cuban spy. For 16 years, Lucy was humiliated, shocked, angry. She and her brother Tito, also an FBI agent, worried they'd lose their jobs. The FBI conducted internal investigations. Were Lucy and Tito involved? Did they know? Had they helped? The investigations cleared them. They'd had no idea. Ana had compartmentalized her life perfectly, never discussed her espionage with family, never gave any hint of her activities. But Lucy felt betrayed. Her sister had made a mockery of everything Lucy stood for. Lucy had dedicated her career to catching spies. Ana had been one. The family fractured. Lucy stopped speaking to Ana. So did Tito. Their parents were devastated. Ana showed no remorse. March 19, 2002, U.S. District Court, Washington, D.C. Ana Montes appeared for her plea hearing before Judge Ricardo Urbina. The government charged her with conspiracy to commit espionage. 1 count. Maximum penalty, death. Her attorney, Plato Caceres, had negotiated a plea deal. Ana would plead guilty, cooperate fully with the damage assessment, provide details of every operation she'd compromised. In exchange, life in prison. No death penalty. Judge Urbina asked if she understood the charges. "Yes, Your Honor." "How do you plead?" "Guilty." Urbina asked if anyone had coerced her plea. "No, Your Honor, I'm pleading guilty because I am guilty." The proceeding lasted 30 minutes. Ana showed no emotion, answered questions calmly, took full responsibility. Her sentencing was scheduled for October 16, 2002. Those 7 months, Ana cooperated. FBI and CIA debriefers interviewed her for hundreds of hours. She walked them through her 16 years of espionage, operation by operation, message by message. She had extraordinary recall, remembered specific intelligence she'd passed, specific messages from her handlers, dates, frequencies, methods. The damage assessment grew worse with every interview. She'd compromised more than investigators initially knew. More operations, more technology, more sources. One detail particularly disturbed investigators. In 1996, Ana had attended a DIA conference on Cuba, met colleagues from other agencies, CIA, NSA, State Department. She'd been networking, building professional relationships. Those colleagues had Cuba-related clearances. Some worked on sensitive operations. Investigators worried. Had Ana been recruiting? Spotting targets for Cuban intelligence like Marta Velasquez had spotted her. Ana insisted she'd never recruited anyone. She'd worked alone, maintained perfect operational security, never discussed her espionage with anyone except her Cuban handlers. Investigators weren't sure they believed her. October 16, 2002, U.S. District Court, Sentencing Day. The courtroom was packed. Media, DIA officials, FBI agents. Victims' family members weren't there because most still didn't know their loved ones had been betrayed by a Pentagon analyst. Judge Ricardo Urbina took the bench. The prosecution requested the maximum sentence under the plea deal, 25 years, followed by 5 years probation. Ana's attorney asked for leniency, argued she'd cooperated fully, provided valuable intelligence for the damage assessment, expressed remorse. Judge Urbina asked if Ana wanted to make a statement. She stood. "Your Honor, I engaged in the activity that brought me before you because I obeyed my conscience rather than the law. I believe our government's policy toward Cuba is cruel and unfair, profoundly unneighborly, and I felt morally obligated to help the island defend itself from our efforts to impose our values and our political system on it." No apology, no remorse, just ideology. Judge Urbina stared at her. "You decided to put your fellow Americans in harm's way. You decided to put your country at risk. For this, you must pay a penalty. If you cannot love your country, at the very least, you should do it no wrong." He sentenced her to 25 years in federal prison, 5 years probation after release, forfeiture of all retirement benefits. Ana showed no reaction. "Do you understand the sentence?" "Yes, Your Honor." She was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. A Federal Bureau of Prisons assigned Ana to Federal Medical Center Carswell in Fort Worth, Texas. Medium security facility for female inmates with medical or mental health needs. Not Supermax. Not solitary confinement. Ana was 45 years old. She'd be eligible for release at age 65 with good behavior. 20 years minimum. She'd served those 20 years quietly. No interviews, no memoirs, no public statements. She maintained her belief she'd done the right thing. Other inmates didn't know she was a spy. To them, she was just another middle-aged woman serving time for white-collar crime. Prison staff knew. They monitored her mail, screened her communications, made sure she had no access to anything that could compromise national security. She worked in the prison library, read extensively, studied languages, kept to herself. And outside the prison, the espionage world changed. The FBI arrested Walter Kendall Myers and his wife Gwendolyn, State Department official, spying for Cuba for 30 years. Even more damaging than Ana Montes in some ways. The case showed Cuban intelligence was still recruiting inside the U.S. government. The Justice Department unsealed an indictment against Marta Rita Velasquez, the woman who'd recruited Ana Montes, charged with conspiracy to commit espionage. But Velasquez had fled to Sweden years earlier, changed her name. Sweden refused to extradite her. She lives there today, free. Never faced trial. Former U.S. Ambassador Victor Manuel Rocha arrested for spying for Cuba for over 40 years. Most senior U.S. official ever charged with Cuban espionage. The case proved Cuba's intelligence service was extraordinarily patient and effective. Ana Montes' case stopped being the most shocking Cuban spy story, but it remained one of the most damaging. January 6, 2023. Federal Medical Center, Carswell. Ana Belen Montes walked out of prison, 65 years old. She'd served 20 years and 4 months, granted early release for good behavior. She was immediately placed on 5 years probation, strict conditions, no contact with Cuban officials, no international travel, regular check-ins with probation officers, monitoring of all communications. She moved to Puerto Rico, her family's ancestral homeland. Quiet life, small apartment. Reporters tried to interview her. She declined. No public appearances, no media statements. One neighbor who didn't know her background told a journalist, "She seems like a nice older lady, keeps to herself, reads a lot." That nice older lady had caused more damage to U.S. intelligence operations against Cuba than any other spy in American history. Current day. Ana Montes is 67 years old, lives in Puerto Rico under probation supervision, reportedly unrepentant, still believes she did the right thing, still thinks U.S.-Cuba policy is wrong. Her sister Lucy, now retired from the FBI, has never publicly commented on Ana's case. The family estrangement apparently continues. Her brother Tito, also retired from the FBI, likewise maintains silence. The DIA's Ana Montes case file remains mostly classified. Full damage assessment has never been publicly released. The intelligence community considers it too sensitive. Some operations she compromised are still classified today. What we know for certain: 4 U.S. intelligence officers were exposed, their operations destroyed. At least 1 U.S. service member killed because of intelligence she provided. Hundreds of millions of dollars in intelligence operations compromised. 16 years of American intelligence on Cuba rendered unreliable because Cuba knew what the U.S. knew. And an ideological spy who worked for no money. Just conscience. Just belief. At the Defense Intelligence Agency today, Ana Montes is studied in counterintelligence training. Her case is taught to every new analyst with a security clearance. The lessons are brutal and clear. Ideology can be as powerful a motivator as money. Perhaps more powerful. Aldrich Ames wanted luxury. Robert Hansen wanted recognition. Ana Montes wanted justice for Cuba. Access and motivation are the 2 ingredients for espionage. Ana had both. Family connections to law enforcement mean nothing. Lucy Montes hunted spies while her sister was one. Compartmentalization works. Long-term ideological spies are extraordinarily patient. 16 years. Ana never rushed, never took unnecessary risks, never got greedy, and counterintelligence must never assume. Ana didn't fit the profile. Model employee. Award winner. Respected expert. No financial red flags. No obvious security violations. She was hiding in plain sight. The physical memorial to Ana Montes' victims is classified. The CIA memorial wall at Langley has stars for officers killed in the line of duty. Some of those stars represent officers whose identities were compromised by Ana Montes. Their names remain secret. Sergeant Gregory Fronius is remembered at the U.S. Army Special Forces Memorial. His name is carved in granite. Visitors can touch his name. Remember his sacrifice. They don't usually know a Pentagon analyst's betrayal contributed to his death. Ana Montes appears in counterintelligence case files, FBI training materials, CIA lessons learned documents, DIA security briefings. Her case is dissected in graduate-level intelligence studies courses. No memorial honors her. No one celebrates her conscience. Books about her case. True Believer. Inside the Investigation and Capture of Ana Montes, Cuba's Master Spy, by Scott Carmichael. Written by the DIA investigator who first suspected her. Detailed account of the investigation. Codename Blue Wren, the true story of America's most dangerous female spy and the sister she betrayed, by Jim Popkin. Focuses on the family angle. Lucy and Ana, FBI sister, spy sister. Queen of Cuba, An FBI agent's insider account of the spy who evaded detection for 17 years, by Peter Lapp and Stephen McCoy, written by one of the FBI agents who arrested her. Documentaries have covered her case: the Discovery Channel, the History Channel. 60 Minutes did a feature, but she's not as famous as Aldrich Ames or Robert Hansen. Why? Several theories. She's a woman. Most spy stories focus on male spies. Media bias makes female spies less interesting. She spied for Cuba, not the Soviet Union or Russia. Cuba is a small island nation. Doesn't have the Cold War superpower mystique. Seems less threatening to most Americans. She didn't get rich. No Jaguar. No mansion. No luxury lifestyle to sensationalize. Just ideology. Less cinematic. But to the intelligence professionals who study her case, Ana Montes is one of the most dangerous spies in American history. Comparing Ana Montes to other major spies: Aldrich Ames, CIA officer, spied for the Soviet Union, then Russia, 1985 to 1994, 9 years active, betrayed over 100 operations, at least 10 CIA assets executed by the Soviet Union, received $4.6 million, life in prison without parole. Robert Hansen, FBI agent, spied for the Soviet Union, then Russia, 1979 to 2001. 22 years active with interruptions, betrayed numerous operations, at least 3 U.S. assets executed, received $1.4 million, life in prison without parole, died in prison, 2023. Ana Montes, DIA analyst, spied for Cuba, 1985 to 2001, 16 years active, betrayed 4 intelligence officers, numerous operations. At least 1 service member killed, received no payment except operational expenses. 25 years in prison, released 2023, ranking among U.S. intelligence community damage assessments. Ana Montes is typically listed as one of the 5 most damaging spies in American history, sometimes top 3 for damage to specific operations against Cuba. Her case remains relevant today because the insider threat continues. Edward Snowden, NSA contractor, 2013, leaked classified documents about surveillance programs, motivated by ideology, fled to Russia. Chelsea Manning, Army intelligence analyst, 2010, leaked classified documents to WikiLeaks, motivated by ideology and conscience, served 7 years. Sentence commuted. Reality winner. NSA contractor, 2017, leaked classified document about Russian election interference, motivated by conscience, served 5 years. The pattern repeats. Access plus motivation equals espionage. The technology changes. Dead drops and shortwave radios become encrypted messaging apps and cloud storage. The core problem doesn't change. People with clearances who believe they know better than the law. Ana Montes believed US-Cuba policy was wrong. She decided her judgment was more important than her oath to protect classified information. She rationalized betrayal as morality. 16 years later, 4 intelligence officers' lives were destroyed. 1 soldier was dead. Hundreds of millions of dollars in operations were compromised. That's the human cost of conscience without accountability. That's why we tell this story. Ana Montes sat in briefings about catching Cuban spies while being one. She read intelligence reports about Cuban intelligence operations while running one. She won awards for her Cuba expertise while betraying every American operation against Cuba, and her sister hunted Cuban spies for the FBI. Never knowing the most damaging Cuban spy was at family dinners. The psychological compartmentalization required is extraordinary. The operational security was nearly perfect. The damage was immense. The official narrative says Ana Montes spied for 16 years, compromised 4 operations, and served 20 years in prison. It doesn't mention the intelligence officers whose careers were destroyed when their covers were blown. The assets who trusted America would protect them and ended up arrested. The operations that were cancelled because Cuba knew about them. The soldiers who planned missions based on intelligence that Cuba had already compromised. The human cost gets footnoted in official documents. We're here to remember it. If this story mattered to you, do something for me right now. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube's algorithm to show this story to more people. Stories like this don't get told unless people like you make them visible. Hit subscribe and click the notification bell. We're pulling stories like this from declassified archives, court records, and forgotten files every single week. Real betrayals, real consequences, real people who paid the price for someone else's ideology. Drop a comment right now. Tell me where you're watching from. United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Germany. This community is worldwide. Tell me if you work in intelligence or law enforcement. Tell me if someone in your family served. Or just type "never forget," so I know you're here. You're not just a viewer. You're part of making sure those 4 intelligence officers aren't forgotten. You're part of making sure Sergeant Fronius's sacrifice is remembered. You're part of making sure Ana Montes' betrayal stays in memory as the cautionary tale it is. Our community is growing every week. People from dozens of countries. Every single one of you matters. One more thing. Share this video. Text it to someone who's into Cold War history or intelligence operations. Post it. Tweet it. Whatever. These stories deserve a bigger audience than they get. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making sure the victims of Ana Montes' betrayal are remembered. Thank you for making sure her case remains a warning about the insider threat that never ends. These weren't just classified files, they were lives. You're helping us honor them. See you in the next story.